Thank you for joining Market News with Rodney Lake. This is a regular program for the GW Investment Institute, where we talk about timely market topics. I'm Rodney Lake, the director of the GW Investment Institute. Let's get started. Welcome back to Market News with Rodney Lake. I'm your host, Rodney Lake. Today we have a special guest, Athletic Director Michael Lipitz. Michael, welcome to the show. We're super excited to have you on the show. And to give you the full title here, you're the Associate Vice President and Director of Athletics at the George Washington University. A pleasure to have you on the show. And thank you so much for making time. I know you have a busy schedule. We're going to date the episode here, but the men's team is headed out soon here. And I know you're joining the team. So thank you for supporting all the athletic events here at GW. But we're obviously rooting for a big win here at this time of year. You know, March is a big time for basketball. So super excited, but thanks for squeezing us in and making time. Very much appreciated. So I'm going to give a couple things, and then I'd love for you to introduce yourself also. So a couple of mentions of your background here: Villanova law grad, University of Maryland. I'm a huge fan of the Terps. I love GW. I'm from Maryland though, so I grew up watching every Terp sport that you can think of. You were the captain of the tennis team there, and the Gary Epley Award winner for the highest GPA. So obviously a great tennis player and great athletics, which, being the AD is sort of makes sense. Your background fits neatly into that. But also worked at a few other places, and maybe you can mention some of those. But this unique blend that you have coming up through athletics and then getting law training and working in some of these Power 5 conferences really brings this, I think, combination, which is well suited. Obviously, none of us can predict the future, but certainly as things have changed, and we'll talk about, the NIL, this business approach or this combination of skills, including the law piece, I think makes a unique blend for this position. Maybe in addition to that, what else could you say about your background, just for people that maybe don't know you for the episode?
Yeah. First, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Appreciate. I'm casual today, as you said. We're about to jump on the bus and head up to Pittsburgh. The A10 men's basketball tournament is in Pittsburgh this year because it's where the league was founded 50 years ago. So it's the 50th anniversary of the A10. So we're coming home. And fun fact, which is GW is the lone remaining charter member of the A10.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Didn't know that.
All the conference realignment right through the years. And so here we are, last one standing. Nice. Also the only AAU member institution in the A10.
Also worth mentioning.
A couple points of pride for us. But yeah, great to be here. Appreciate you having me. And it's been, this is my 27th year in college athletics. So as you mentioned, I started in this as a student athlete at Maryland across town, and that was my connection, to GW. I'm originally from New Jersey, South Jersey, and came to Maryland to play tennis. But watched the success that GW was having in the years that I was in College Park, particularly in basketball. It was the time frame where Yinka Dare was helping to put GW on the map in basketball, and Coach McEwen was doing his thing with the women's basketball program, and so that for me was at least in those days the reference point for GW. And so my after law school, went back to Maryland and worked there for a dozen years. Moved on, went to NC State for 9, and then out to Chicago, where I was the athletic director at UIC, nice. Illinois, Chicago, and now back here in the DMV. This is just my second year in Foggy Bottom, but it's great to be here. And it's just a phenomenal area where I know we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the selling points for GW and the balance of academics and athletics that we have here. But yeah, my experience is leading to this point. It's been good, it's been good training, right? All through the years. But there's no question that these last 5 to 10 years, but certainly the last 5 years in college athletics have seen more change than the prior 50. Yeah. And I know we're going to get into a lot of that detail, but there's not a dull moment these days in terms of where the enterprise is. And I think, I know we're going to have some good conversation just in terms of the balance between kind of what college athletics has traditionally been and where we are now in terms of some of the more professionalization, the business side of college sports. So appreciate you having me.
No, thank you so much. So a couple of questions here. You mentioned this already, but maybe just a finer point on why come to GW? Why the Revs? Why the Revolutionaries?
Yeah. So, I mean, aside from this being, my wife is from this area. So
that helps.
From a personal standpoint, it's good for our family to be back. But from in terms of GW and the opportunity here, it starts with a leadership alignment. Mm-hmm. In any organization that's critical. And so when I had the chance to get with Dr. Gramberg and understand her vision for how athletics can lead the university forward and play an integral role in that, that's what got me excited. And both from the president to the board of trustees, the belief that athletics can help elevate the entire institution.
Right.
That's really why we're here, right? I mean, there's a couple of components that athletics brings to the table. I mean, we're in the business of developing future leaders,
right?
In terms of our young people, but as an enterprise, the opportunity is to use athletics as a vehicle to brand the university, to raise the visibility of the university. And there's a lot of different ways that we do that we'll get into. But in order to have the chance to do those things, we have to have leadership alignment,
right? And
we do here. And that's what got me so excited to come back and to take on this opportunity, because as I mentioned, I remember what it was in the years where GW, and particularly in the sport of basketball, right, and having a national profile,
of course,
playing this time of year in the postseason. It's advertising, marketing, branding that you just can't buy.
It's very difficult, so right?
That's the exciting part, is to help GW get back to having that national profile in basketball, and that's the business we're going about right now.
Well, we're all excited about that, and again, thanks for being on the show, and thanks for taking time to go with the team. And good luck to the team in Pittsburgh. Obviously, we're all rooting for the team. All right, so a couple of things now. You mentioned some of this. College athletics has changed more now in the last few years, really, like you said, than the last 50. And so with this change, you've basically gone from this amateur model to this nearly free agent model. When you have the NIL and the transfer portal is very different than it was years ago. How has this sort of changed the way that you approach it's nearly an investment now. Obviously, our show is sponsored by the GW Investment Institute. It's not exactly an investment, but it's very, very close to that, because you have to think in terms of ROI. Like, as you mentioned, like we're going to have to pay for a certain amount of, sort of talent, and they have the ability to go other places and receive that same type of compensation or higher. And it's a very different model than it was years ago. How do you think about it for, this NIL collective and the revenue strategy and the return on investment? And how has that changed for you specifically since you got the GW?
Yeah, it's in a really interesting time right now. And it's, we talk about the business of college sports, and there's no question that's accurate in many instances. It's interesting though, because we're more of a quasi business, right? We still exist in higher education.
Correct.
And we don't just look at the balance sheet, but obviously the finances matter. And so in this moment where, as you said, we're in an ecosystem now with post-house settlement, right? In the advent of, we went from no money being paid to student athletes to third-party money with NIL being paid to student athletes to now direct revenue sharing, right? In a matter of just a few years. And so it's, largely this has always been about prioritizing resource allocation. And so, since I got to Foggy Bottom, I've said we're going to lead with basketball. Our men's and women's basketball teams are where we're going to make the largest investments. The A-10 is a basketball conference.
Right.
And so in order to compete at the top of the conference, that's what's required, right? Because while investing in our men's and women's basketball programs, it certainly doesn't guarantee success.
Correct.
To not invest, I think guarantees failure.
Yeah.
So that's the business we're going about. And we look at all the different revenue generation options, from ticket sales to corporate partnerships, to donations, obviously. And you mentioned the collective component to this. We chose to roll our collective in-house. So we shut down the collective, brought it in, because now that we can do direct revenue sharing, we found that it to be more efficient, a cleaner message, a more direct message for donors.
And seemingly you have more control as well.
Yeah, just to donate to the university, have your tax deduction, right? And now it's all under one umbrella. Makes it a lot more streamlined and easier to manage. So that's where we are today. But the provision of those resources and the deployment of those resources, right? That really is core to now competing at the top of the league.
Right.
And that really is our focus. And so, ultimately we're trying to put our head coaches in positions to put those resources to work. Right. And then this part's always been the same. It remains true today, which is, the outcomes are how we're evaluating things. Right. And so, there's no more, our men's and women's basketball coaches don't put any more pressure on themselves today than they did just a few years ago. I mean, it's, we keep score for a reason, and we're, those really are the outcomes, when we're looking at, okay, this is the investment and how are we doing? Yeah, of course we're going to measure outcomes. And so, those are the key metrics that we're looking at as we advance.
Well, and that's a great segue here. I was going to ask specifically about key metrics when you're talking about that, and obviously for a team, wins and losses is one of those metrics. But maybe metrics, and you talked about this. Are there other metrics that you're tracking that sit outside of those things? That obviously there are metrics for the coaches and the teams, but there are metrics for the programs for you. So at the GW level, obviously you're in charge of all of this. What metrics are you thinking about when you think in terms of ROI for the entire university?
Yeah, and there's a few things. I mean, just for athletics in our department, I mean, we're certainly looking at, in terms of generating resources, right? We are looking at ticket sales, right? Season ticket sales, single game sales, those kinds of things. You mentioned fundraising and corporate partnerships. There's a lot of room to run in those spaces, especially in a market like DC.
Yeah.
One of the things we look at is just the opportunity to both for the basketball programs, for the athletics department, but for the university is national television appearances. I mean, this year was a good example where just our men's basketball program was on national television 11 times.
Wow.
Big step forward from the last few years, but it's in part because of the investment that we've made, and the recognition that we're making progress, right? We're trending in the right direction. Yeah. So that gets you more national TV appearances. And that's the branding, right, to elevate the entire university and get the GW brand out
people
there.
Didn't know, like, oh, okay, I'm going to watch this game, and you find out about GW.
As I've these first 18 months or so, as I've met a lot of alumni and talked to people, the number of times that our alumni will say to me, "Hey, the first time that I thought about coming to GW was I saw the basketball team playing in March," right? I've heard that story over and over and over again. And that's going to be true for future generations of students, just like it was for, our past alumni. And so those are some of the metrics that we look at that are outside of wins and losses, right? Because all of that then translates to the things that athletics can do as a vehicle for the university in terms of building community for our students and delivering campus life, engaging the local and regional community, in terms of being a lot of times the first point of contact for people to come to the campus, and then keeping alumni engaged. So it can have that direct impact, obviously, on philanthropy,
right?
As well as, again, the front end of the funnel for future students of applications, driving enrollment, right? I mean, we see this across the country. Whenever there's lots and lots of stories where, more recently you look at an Indiana football, right? And what they were able to do, but there's lots of examples going back over the years where if you can put yourself on the national stage, it can really change the fortunes of an entire university.
Absolutely. No, that's a great example. So sticking with, the overall business of everything, you've led some major capital projects at NC State, at UIC. Thinking about GW and the Smith Center, I know we've engaged HOK for this master plan. Maybe you could talk about your vision for this master plan.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think in some ways, the idea of, facility enhancement seems a little bit outdated because, we're in an era of revenue sharing and that's got to be the primary thing. But at the same time, facilities do still matter.
Right.
That physical manifestation of our commitment, it does matter. When you walk into any building, any student athlete is looking at what's my training environment, what's my day-to-day going to look and feel like, and do I feel supported and have what I need? And so this is an area where historically, it's been a long-standing desire for GW to have a facility for basketball to practice. That's in part to benefit and support our basketball programs. The other component to that is to free up space in the Smith Center.
Right.
Another one of the kind of routine conversations I have with alumni is all the concerts and events over the years that folks would go to as students. Those are kind of core memories for people about their time here. And we want to get back to the Smith Center being not just a place where we play basketball or volleyball or gymnastics, but also where you can go to see a concert, come watch a great comedy show, see a family show, bring in folks from the neighborhood, right? And so in order to do that, though, we have to have a place for our teams to go.
Right.
We can't just book the building and then they have nowhere to practice.
Good luck. Right.
So the desire for a space for basketball, in this case, to practice day to day, is also to free up time so that the Smith Center can really be that convening space and community building space that it's capable of being. And it's a great footprint. It's a great building. There's been a lot of good work done over the years. It shows really well. It's just a great place to watch any event. But the vision for that facility is, yes, there's a basketball component, but it's broader than that in terms of support for all 400 athletes, all 20 varsity programs. Our health and wellness spaces, strength and conditioning, sports medicine, athletic medicine, academic support, those units that are currently in Smith Center are undersized. Yeah. And so we want to create a space that's, brighter, larger, more welcoming, where all of our student athletes have an opportunity to be supported at a really, really high level. So that's in those plans in terms of the vision for a performance center. And it is the centerpiece of what we've worked on with HOK as one of the leading sports architecture firms in the country for an athletics master plan. And we're doing that alongside of the current campus planning effort that's underway, because those things need to feather together. And so, working hand in glove with campus to figure out, not just in this case, a basketball practice facility, a sports performance center to support all our athletes, but we have the Mount Vernon campus. Right. Baseball plays at Barcroft and at Tucker Field in Arlington, and so all those facilities. There's each of the coaches, each of the programs have desires, and their alumni have desires to continue to enhance those facilities. That's all part of the plan as well.
Excellent. Shout out to Abe Tucker. He's been a guest in one of my classes. So thanks, Abe, for the baseball field. So. Speaking of fundraising and corporate partnerships, you mentioned a little bit of this before, but Vanda Pharmaceuticals is now a presenting sponsor. Could you talk a little bit about the fundraising overall and the effort? You mentioned a little bit, and obviously this is a great win to have Vanda as a premier sponsor here. Could you just talk through what's the strategy moving forward for this type of effort?
Yeah, it's really leave no stone unturned is probably the best way to say it. I mean, we have lots of great opportunity, both in terms of major gift fundraising, ticket sales, but also as you said, corporate partnerships, and we're in the right type of market. It's a crowded market, right? DC is very much a pro sports market, right? There's a lot of competition, but there's also a lot of opportunity in terms of the corporations that are here. You mentioned Vanda, really a flagship partner for us, a new partner this year, but they're headquartered right here on our Foggy Bottom campus.
That's great.
So kind of a natural fit for both of us, and it's a good example of what's possible. And we've the NCAA, as you may have read, I mean, just recently approved jersey patches for the first time, which across sports all over the globe has been a mainstay. But this will be the first time starting next year where you'll see sponsors on jerseys of student athletes, and so that it presents new opportunities to go to market to drive additional revenue to put back into those programs.
It's a little bit like the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. The WNBA has it. I mean, pro soccer has it. It's pretty much in.
It's common now.
Yeah, it's commonplace. And so, the NCAA is still working through what exactly that's going to look like from sport to sport. The batting helmet, the volleyball shirt, whatever that ends up looking like. But that's just another example where a new opportunity comes online for us to be able to try to monetize to better support our student athletes moving forward. And when we think about resource generation, the way that I tend to talk with our staff and we frame that is, we're not going head to head with Ohio State or Texas, right? I mean, it's a different type of level of athletics. For us, it's about competing in the A10 and having the opportunity to compete for A10 championships year in and year out. And so we're trying to match the level of investment in those resources to that expectation, right? Because if we're unable to put the resources into a program, and for example, if a particular sport is resourced at the bottom of the A10, it's not reasonable to say, well, we expect you to compete for titles. And so the goal is year over year is to generate resources where we put each of our teams, level with their peers or better than their peers. And that's going to give us the chance to then, both have the expectation to and ultimately deliver on, championship level programs across the board for us.
Thank you. So shifting gears a little bit here, talking about academics. So obviously the market has shifted quite a bit, but obviously being a student remains quite important, and especially from my standpoint, and many others too, and I'm sure yours. But graduation rates continue to be very high, 97% here, consistently 94 plus, high GPA 3.4. How do you continue this excellent tradition, especially in light of the way that the market is changing?
Yeah, it's one of the things that's great about GW, right? And not every university can say this. It doesn't just happen, right? It starts with recruiting and who you recruit, who our coaches choose to bring into the fold. Right. That's the basis, right? So not only are we seeking talented athletes, we're seeking great students. And they're coming to a really high level academic environment. So it's a great selling point for GW and for our athletics department. And so, yeah, this fall posting a 97% graduation success rate. It's the
congratulations.
highest. No, it's great. They did all the work. So it's congratulations.
Well, you have to set up the environment for success.
And shout out to our academic services unit, our staff that works hand in hand with our student athletes every day, as well as our faculty and staff that support them all over campus.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, I mean,
I know James, so shout out to James.
Yeah, absolutely. James does a great job with leading that unit. And so, the graduation rate, the 3.4 GPA, I mean, half of our 400 student athletes had over a 3.5 GPA.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
Dean's List level. And so it's absolutely a selling point, and it's part of the culture of GW, right? In terms of you come here, you expect to compete at a high level in the A10, but also compete academically.
Right.
And I think at times, sometimes the national conversation about college athletics, we can lose sight of that is still a reality, right? The idea that, yes, they are, and the majority of our student athletes are very much still student athletes.
Correct.
Sometimes the headline of at a power conference, a $10 million quarterback, those kind of conversations, some of this gets lost in the noise. As the commercial says, I mean, the student athletes are not likely to go pro, right? They're going to go pro in something other than sports.
Yes.
And that's very much true for our group, right? And so part of our commitment and our obligation to them is to make sure that whether it's the personal development, the academic development, that's all happening alongside of the athletic development, so that for the next 40, 50 years of your life, you're set up for success. And GW, I think is actually, positioned in a way that it's a competitive advantage for us. I mean, the combination of our location with internships and job opportunities, right, for all of our students, it's just a phenomenal setup for our students to achieve at a really high level as we see those results.
Excellent. So next up here is, back to the overall business.
Mm-hmm.
And again, congratulations to all the students. Shout out to James again. But these success rates, I think, are important, and obviously showcase the fact, as you mentioned, that they truly are student athletes here. And as you mentioned, they're going pro in something else besides very likely their sport. Now, some do, but the vast majority are going to go pro in accounting or finance or computer science or whatever it happens to be. So,
many business majors.
Exactly. And I'm partial to them as well. But rooting for all of our student athletes. So now on the overall business. So, the university has a board of trustees, has an investment committee. When you're thinking about, how we're pitching this to this internal group, and we talked a little bit about this along the way here, but, versus a cost center, making this the front porch for the university, if you had to talk about what are the guiding principles to think about how we position this and how we position the revenue sharing and how we make sure it's an asset allocation, as you mentioned, opportunity for and challenge as well, how do you guide yourself, and how do you guide the team to think through, what's the best way to position this so that we're thinking in terms of metrics that we can track and that we can really decide afterwards to say, look, this was a success and here's why. And we have tangible output that we can demonstrate to people, including, for example, the investment committee or the board of trustees. Yeah,
because there are both financial metrics and non-financial metrics, right? And we've touched on some of them, but I think, just on the business side of it, the economics of sports, I guess, there's, as we mentioned before, there's certainly the outcomes, the competitive outcomes. You say, okay, we're investing in these programs, and therefore, what are those outcomes? We're always going to measure that.
This year? Yeah,
of course, we're always going to measure that. But I go back to this concept of athletics as a vehicle for the university, right? And so it's, you have to really drill down and look at the platform that athletics provides. And so I'll give you some specific examples. The A10 as a conference, right? We're really fortunate to be an A10 member, right? And again, charter member. We've got the best television package as a league outside of the Power Five.
Oh, wow.
And the Big East.
I did not know that.
So, we're right now, we're ranked 7th nationally out of the 32 basketball conference, right? We're really high level basketball conference. But in terms of the television package, what that delivers is all these opportunities to put GW on that national stage, right? So our staff does roughly somewhere between 80 and 100 streaming broadcasts on ESPN Plus every year, right? So we're producing those and putting those out there. But then there's those national TV broadcasts.
Right.
The A10 footprint is 33% of the national TV market. It's 40 million households.
Wow.
Right? So those 11 broadcasts that I mentioned that men's basketball had this year, those are the households that we're getting into. Those are the states and the footprint that we're penetrating. And it's top. Of the top 30 TV markets in the country, the A10 occupies 7, right?
Wow.
So whether it's Chicago or St. Louis or Philadelphia or here in DC,
right,
up to New York with, where we have Fordham, that's really the Northeast for us, as we know, we draw a lot of students from the Northeast. Correct. So that's an example, and a very concrete example of where investment in athletics translates to eyeballs on GW, right? And marketing and branding. So that's one really, really concrete example.
Thank you.
Another one, though, is in terms of tracking in the metrics and what we look at is I go back to this idea of developing young people and future leaders. So not just that they're doing great in the classroom, but we look at the outcomes in terms of, job placement, how students do when they leave here. I mean, I'm very fond of referring to college athletics as a leadership laboratory and arguably one of the best that's ever been invented.
Yeah.
And it's a uniquely American experience, right? The rest of the world doesn't combine athletics and academics in the same way.
Right.
And we have, as we know, we have students from all over the globe that come here for that, that intercollegiate athletics experience that only the U.S. delivers. And I'll give you a couple of data points that I think drive this home. There was a Cornell study that was done right before the pandemic that showed that 80% of Fortune 500 executives played college sports.
Oh, wow.
That number is 94% for C-suite women.
Wow.
And so the power of sport, the leadership lessons and life lessons that you learn through sport, right? They translate. It's one of the reasons we just the other night, we had our annual student athlete networking forum where we have alumni and members of the business community come and meet with student athletes. They're really highly desirable future employees,
of course,
because of the skill sets. Right?
They're disciplined. They know how to work hard.
Right. And so again, when we talk about outcomes, yes, we're looking at the finances, right? Yes, we're looking at the branding opportunities and the marketing vehicle that athletics is. That's another one that we look at and are proud to promote because, and I would say this about lots of college athletics programs around the country, but I think GW, because of who we are academically, I think we can do this and do this at a really high level. So it's another one of those metrics that we really pay close attention to. And then the last one I would mention along these lines is part of the ROI for athletics here and at other colleges is just, we're community builders, right? We're here to build community, both in terms of the student experience while students are on campus and bringing alumni back to campus, past their days in our case in Foggy Bottom. So those are those metrics that, again, some financial, some not financial. But when we talk about return on investment of what athletics delivers for the university, it's all those things.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. I think that's really important to mention all those, and those are great stats to have and have them top of mind. So to wrap here up the episode, but thanks before we wrap, thank you so much, AD Lipitz, for being on the show and making time. And again, I know you have a super busy schedule, including getting out of here. So looking ahead here for the next 3 to 5 years, what's your vision for GW Athletics and how should we be thinking about both supporting you and being part of it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that we keep top of mind, right? I mean, we start with the academics. We've talked about it a lot, but we want to maintain where we are academically, right? I mean, we're setting records in the classroom. We want to continue to do that. We've talked basketball and returning our basketball programs to the top of the league. Because of the strength of the league, that equals having a national presence, right? And again, nothing replicates the impact of playing in March and ideally deep into March. There's a lot of examples. I mean, we look not too far, right across the river at our friends at George Mason that they had a run that we're still 20 years later
people still talk about it. Yeah,
and
everybody knows they made it to the Final Four,
and it was a great run, and the benefits to the university continue to this day. The same's true for what Loyola has done a little more recently, right? And everybody, Sister Jean is a household name, right? Because of what basketball delivered for that campus, and so that's our focus when it comes to the again prioritizing our men's and women's basketball programs. And then in order to do that, we're going to come back to on the financial side of resource generation, right? So that's going to continue to be top of mind for us because in order to put our programs in position to achieve those kind of things, we have to support them in all the right ways. So all the resource generation efforts are top of mind for us. And again, the big outcome for all that, if we're doing those things well, if we're doing athletics well, so to speak, then we're going to deliver a united community. We're going to inspire our campus community, right? We're going to bring people back to campus. We're going to see applications go up. That halo effect that athletics can deliver, right? That's really the focus. And so, but it's built on those kind of foundational pillars, and that's really what our focus is day to day.
Well, thank you so much. Again, we're delighted to have you on the show. We know you're super busy. It's a super busy time of year. So thank you, AD Lipitz. Hope you'll be back on the show at some point in the future.
Absolutely, I'd love to. And we didn't touch on this, but investing for me is a personal hobby.
Oh, nice.
Right. So another time we can talk.
Have to do a whole other episode.
I'm a devout boglehead, and so
nice.
I'm very much into the space. And so at another episode we can have that conversation.
Well, now we have a built-in next episode. So thank you, AD Lipitz, and that's a wrap for this episode. So thank you for watching Market News with Rodney Lake. We'll be back on the next episode. Thank you. Disclaimer, the content shared in the GW Investment Institute podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the GW Investment Institute or the George Washington University. Listeners should not act upon the information provided without seeking professional advice from a qualified financial advisor. Investing involves risks, including the loss of principal. The GW Investment Institute, the George Washington University, and the podcast hosts do not assume any responsibility for any investment decisions made based on the content of this podcast. Always conduct your own research and consult with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.